Okay, so round of applause for our amazing artist. I want to welcome you all to the next panel, described as No Transformation Without Imagination. My name is Lisa Russell. I'm an Emmy Award-winning filmmaker and the founder of Create 2030. I've spent the last 20 years working as a contracted filmmaker and arts curator at the United Nations. So I love this next panel, which is a discussion at the intersection of arts and policy. Now, as you can see, we have quite a few panelists today for a 45-minute session. So instead of reading off everybody's bios, I'm going to have them do a quick introduction of themselves and quickly discuss a little or share a thought on why arts and culture is important in the sustainability movement. So first of all, I'm going to pass it over to Jessie, who's our star artist. And instead of jumping into sort of policy talk, I would love for you to maybe just do a quick introduction on how your journey began and how you gravitated to becoming an artist in the climate, environmental, sustainability space.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the invitation. My name is Jessie Kleemann. My family calls me Jessie Kleemann. So your family, my family now. So I started out as a very young artist working with printmaking, drawing, and then I'm trained as an actor at the Duker Theater. So after a long time being in Copenhagen, I felt that all this new things coming on to us, scientists speaking about the climate changes and how the ice is melting in Greenland. And because I'm from Greenland, I just really felt that this is my world, and this is my, that's my suffering. That's my suffering that I want to share. And it's a universal kind of suffering because the Arkhticós means the Arctic, and dolorôs, in pain. It's global, and we are all facing it at the same time. So that's, I think, very shortly, that's why I wanted to do that kind of work.
Beautiful, and I'm sure you have a much deeper story than that, but thank you for being succinct. All right, and our next speaker, we're going to introduce Rodion. I am not going to try to pretend to mention your last name, so if you could spell it out for us, that would be great.
Do you hear me? Yes, thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. My name is Rodion Sulandziga, and I am working for International Working Group on Indigenous Affairs. It's international NGOs based in Copenhagen, focusing on human rights for indigenous peoples. Originally, I am from Eastern Siberia of Russia, in my community called Udege, which means forest people. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And our next speaker, Gunn-Britt.
Yes, hello everybody. Brave and happy Independence Day to Finland. I'm a Sami person from northeast Norway, based very far to the Russian, very close to the Russian border, even closer to the Finnish border, by the fjord facing the east. I work as head of Arctic and Environmental Unit of the Sami Council, as Pan-Sami organization. And I happen also to be a board member of this International Sami Film Institute, which is based in Godegeino. And I've known Rodion for, I think, 20 years, and we also appeared that we had met 20 years ago when I used to work and live in Copenhagen. And I think art is important because it's an eye-opener. The indigenous art is an eye-opener for the larger audience to understand our issues, and through that we can create alliances in the society at large.
Thank you very much. Okay, and our next speaker, Louise Linden. You want to do a quick introduction? Greetings.
Yes, hello, Louise from Sweden. Well, when I was 18 years old, I actually quit school and started a music festival, youth-led music festival for sustainability. And I have worked with combining climate justice and art and culture since then. And I believe culture has a very important role to play to help us to connect to the climate crisis, not only in our mind, but also in our heart. And we can use it to turn radical imagination into action.
Fantastic. And our last panelist, Solveig Korum. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your last name correctly. Welcome.
Thank you so much. You're pronouncing it perfectly. My name is Solveig, and I work for Arts and Culture Norway. I am a bureaucrat, a researcher, and a yoga teacher, all kind of mixed up. But I guess the topic of sustainability and working for culture, for art, and for climate issues kind of brings together all these different parts of my professional identities, because I do think that we need to work with art and culture in a systemic and infrastructural way, but you also need to kind of connect with it on a heart, mind, body, and imaginatory level. And so I think the main power of art is this imaginative spaces that it opens up to make us move more freely and be more free and imaginative as humans, what are our processes and relationships. But in order to do that, we need to create the frames and structure to enable us to connect and to be in that process together.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So before we get going into the discussion, I also would love to know in the audience if there are people here who identify as artists or creative professionals. Raise your hand. Right on. Woo! Okay. Hands up. Fantastic. So, so this COP is, we've seen an unprecedented number of initiatives as well as actual creative practitioners actually involved in the conference. And my question to the panelists, and again we can go quickly through each panelist, is what do you foresee as the challenges and also the opportunities for engaging a creative community that might speak a different language, that might work differently than scientists, climate scientists, data scientists, and how we can engage with them in COP conferences in these settings. Again, what are some of the positives and also the challenges? We'll start with you, Jessie.
Well, I really believe that all the challenges that we face as artists and workers in culture sector within these challenging times, wartime, climate crisis time, we have to be included, and we have to share what we know already, and where we come from. I think we have a lot of commonality with different communities and countries and languages and different kind of sectors and areas within arts and culture. But the challenge is that how do we move freely, and how do we put our work into the agenda so that we also can be heard, can be listened to. Or first of all, of course, as an artist myself, I had to learn to listen deeply and go back to my own roots and get to know my own pain or suffering or my love for this planet or for my fellow human brothers and sisters, but also for the whole holistic place that we call Earth. So I think there's always some kind of a traveling issue in this, where we share knowledge and education and all the basics. But I really believe that artists must be included, first thing, yeah. And then, how do we speak that? Next challenge.
Next challenge.
Yeah.
Yes, first, let me thanks for bringing us together. And frankly speaking, it's something new for me in terms of framework. Because what is climate change is quite clear. I mean, we don't need any introduction. what is just transition? I think many of us, we are trying to understand, even from different prospects, business, government, indigenous peoples, civil society, and conservation society, for instance, and culture. So for me, it's quite a new framework, how we can combine, but it looks very interesting and bring more opportunities, because cultural rights is also part of human rights of indigenous peoples. But from my prospect, first we should create some kind of common understanding between us, because otherwise if we have different kind of understanding what we are talking about, so it would be so challenging to find some kind of solution or even, consensus. But of course, in general, we as indigenous peoples, we strongly believe in so-called green economy or just transition based on Paris Agreement to move, to shift from fossil fuels to green energy. Yes, it's quite clear. But on the other hand, I think there are several basic lines or even entry points. How clean the road itself to the clean energy? And evergreen mining can be green. So there are still some kind of question we should try to find the answer before a fake solution. So, and again, if you look at the indigenous culture, it's also many things. It's not just traditional knowledge, language, spirituality, music and dance. It's not even connection only to climate change and solution under the climate battle. It's also social cohesion, which is reflected in the governance and leadership. So, which means for me, culture of indigenous peoples plays a critical role in advancing equality, human rights, and fighting climate change.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, I think art can tell a story in a different way. And through art and artistic expressions, we can touch people's hearts, even politicians' hearts. So art is, in that sense, I think, very important. And as indigenous peoples, again, what Rodion also said, we have this holistic approach to things. So art and culture in our society is fundamental. And indigenous art also contains a lot of indigenous knowledge, crucial to keep the connection between humans and nature, which we experience a lot of people are searching for. So, and the concept of culture is broadly defined from a Sami perspective and also includes the material basis for life. Precisely because creative practices are so intertwined with the way of life. Our connections to land and water, livelihood, cultural heritage, traditional knowledge, language, and our practices. So it kind of ties all this together. So in this respect, Sami cultural actors and artists have a very important societal mission. To take care of and pass on our creative practices, our indigenous Sami knowledge and the language. So, but to find the arenas to reach to the politicians is maybe the challenge here.
Right. Good point. Okay, and Luis, you want to take this question?
Yeah, definitely. I can just add to what the others say about the importance of stories, because the fact is that we are not only in a climate crisis, but also a kind of imagination crisis. And we need to train our capacity to imagine a different future. And to do that, we need all kinds of stories from people all across the world. And the truth is we have mainly dystopian future scenarios in our popular stories where, nature wipes out humanity, climate change makes us colonize other planets, or technology turns against us. And we need more positive stories about the future where we fix this crisis and we build a better future for everyone. I believe that culture can help us reach more people outside these typical contexts, such as COP28 and other meetings. And we can do that through culture and through these platforms. And also one thing that is important to remember is that artists, they don't only have people's attention, but also their commitment and trust. When they speak, people listen. And that's not only an opportunity, but also a big responsibility.
Yeah, excellent point. Excellent. And Solveig.
Yes, I think what we're now talking about is kind of how culture can raise awareness and catalyze action about sustainability and climate change. And from a policy point of view, that's kind of one of the objectives that we're trying to facilitate, like from the system itself to enable that to happen. And another thing that we are aiming to make happen is to foster this global ecological citizen help to identify and tackle sustainability as a global issue. And that's exactly kind of the point of this panel, bringing together different voices to discuss this across borders. And two other primary objectives that I would like to highlight from a policy point of view that we have also kind of been touching a little bit upon is to safeguard and sustain cultural practices and rights, which is kind of when you are in a crisis, rights issues are pressured. And there are also like different there are oppositions within the UN sustainability agenda. For example, the green shift versus, for example, the Sami people having the rights to culture and to their land. And so these kind of conflicts are arising. And from a cultural point of view and from a policy point of view, it's overall to create frameworks to safeguard the rights and cultural practices. And the last policy objectives that I would like to highlight is the greening of operations in our sector as such, like to make productions, cultural productions greener, like greener festivals like Louise is an excellent representative of, and also the cultural houses, big operas, the national museums, like everywhere, and how artists are touring, all these things, we need to look into it to be able to, maybe make requirements, but not only requirements, but also give tools to the sectors to be able to address the issues and not come there as a state and say, like, we need to do this and we need to do that, but really make everyone kind of aware about these issues and make them feel like something is at stake for them as well. It's not only the state requiring something or an external part requiring something, but it's our humanity that is at stake. And together we need to create a system and infrastructure that will be able to hold this new future that we're all talking about and that we're already in. The future is happening now, so we need to act now.
Yeah, thank you so much. And yes, and I agree that, creative practitioners and artists are not just spokespeople for sustainability, but we also have to be practitioners. And so with that said, I want to transition over into the conversation about artist representation. There are some artists who may be concerned that showcasing art, for example, may feel a little tokenistic because a lot of times it's just like, entertain us, put on a video, sing a song, read a poem. And so I'm actually really appreciative that the Nordic Council has decided to include the artist whose artwork we are seeing as part of this conversation. But when you are talking about a relatively untapped sector who, again, works differently, speaks differently, survives differently, how can we ensure that this movement to engage creative practitioners is just, inclusive, and sustainable in this policy and program space? Because again, livelihoods are very different, languages are very different, but we are trying to mesh these two worlds together, and how can we do so in a meaningful and responsible manner? You want to go? Good. Gun-Britt?
Yeah, well, I don't know if I'm able to answer that question, but I was also disturbed by this fly on my nose, so I don't really know what to respond to that. Maybe you repeat the question.
Sure. Just in terms of, there are a lot of opportunities to showcase art as entertainment. We show movies, we speak, perform, but artists are also known as incredible creative thinkers and problem solvers, but it's challenging sometimes to get a seat at the table because we are considered sort of, I compare it to what the youth movement actually went through in the last 10 years of feeling like there is youth washing. I still feel like there's some arts washing. So how can we ensure that this, untapped community that again speaks differently, survives differently, works differently than maybe policy and program folks, how can we ensure that this isn't just a trendy, arts and culture phase, but that we actually, ingrain it and make it sustainable in the movement long term?
Yeah, and I could add to that artistic and youth tokenistic. We feel that as indigenous peoples as well, as oftentimes we feel that we are giving and sharing and demanding and also brought into panels or into rooms as a token to tick off the box. So we had a meeting. Maybe it was good, but we have been meeting John Kerry this morning. But we did that last year and the year before, so we don't know what come out of it. So I think I don't really know how to. What I feel as a Sami person, I can maybe say more of that. And I've been working on Arctic environmental policies for 20 years. I'm a very patient person in that sense. Oh no, I even lost my line. So that we are engaging and demanding. But yes, so as a Sami person, we are taken into account when it's about culture or singing and dancing. And then in the Norwegian setting, for example, we often hear, Sami culture is important, but now the relationship to Russia is more important. And then when it's festivities, we're taken up and get some artists to sing and yoik and so on. And we say, but it's very important to protect Sami culture because that's a part of the solution to the climate change, because we are guardians of the nature and the ecosystems that remain intact through our traditional or our livelihoods. That's important. But now the green transition is more important because you have to give up land for the greater good. But when the protection of land would be the solution. So I think, so again, the answer is probably, there is always something when it comes to the core decision making or urgent action like in COP here, and the negotiations get heated, then all these other alternative voices are left behind, and they come into core politics. So this is a nut to crack. I don't know how to get that. And maybe alliances, again, is the answer, that we, indigenous people, youth, and artists, and so on, that we just have to keep kicking.
Yeah, it is, and I didn't expect you to have the perfect answer for it. I personally have realized that representation, whether you are a woman, a young person, an indigenous leader, matters in this space. And right now, artists don't really have representation. We are looked at, again, as entertainers, and this became very prominent to me during COVID when everybody recognized that the pandemic had a huge impact on the financial livelihoods of artists, and yet there were consistently arts contests being put out. Give us your artwork for free. Give us your illustrations for free. Give us your photography for free. And I'm screaming, if you had a community or committee of artists who could actually check you and tell you this campaign is not ethical, it's not sustainable, you are harming, even with good intentions, the creative community, I think we would have a better outcome. You look like you want to say something.
Well, I just felt that I wanted to add to that because I think the alliances that artists make across the borders are really, really important, and to make actions and to make, not only to make changes, but to start changing things together. I think that's, and also, of course, as an elderly artist now, I mean, it's important that we have our lineage to the younger generations and our descendants, that we have a linkage in all what we do. So it creates a holistic perspective of the changes that we want to implement for the coming generations, and not just now, but for the coming generations as well. So I think, yeah, we have to teach and we have to make alliances.
Okay, I think Solveig has a finger up. Does that mean you want to speak?
Yes. Well, just kind of in the line of all what we're talking about now, I think it's important to, well, like now again, speaking from a policy point of view, I do think it's important to bring in kind of value questions again into this kind of framework, because the system is kind of very often regarded as, no, it has some values, of course, but it's mainly infrastructure. And then the politicians, they fill it with, with their values. But I do think that when I speak about values, it's not only kind of the right wing and the left wing politics and this polarization, but we need to come back to, well, like core human values and use those in all our operations, like asking questions like, is this kind? Is it compassionate? And really put like up an integrity lens and a mirror in front of ourselves, regardless of where we work and what we do. But as policymakers, as artists, as people who want to invest in something, as kind of everyone who has a role to play in this field, we need to use that integrity lens and come back to the deeper human values and actually play them out on a day-to-day basis. And based on that, I do think that we can be able to move a step further in this. Is it kind? Is it compassionate?
No, I really love that. Thank you for speaking that. And I do feel that arts and policymakers kind of speak different languages, but are having parallel conversations about improving communities, saving lives, et cetera. And I think if there was a way to bring these two worlds together, even the playing fields, because a lot of times the power dynamic favors the policymaker and less the artist, I think we could actually make some interesting partnerships and way forward. And so Louise, I actually want to ask you a question because you work in festivals. And one of the conversations we've had is, do we really want to bring artists into conferences? Most artists I know do not voluntarily sign up to come to a conference. They'd rather be at a festival. They'd rather be in a studio. I'm wondering if you had thoughts about how we can kind of crisscross our spaces where we come together. Could we invite policymakers more into the festival setting, more into the studio setting, in the creative spaces, instead of expecting the creative professional to sit in, day-long conferences and listen to people speak? It's not how a lot of creative professionals I know process information or get inspired. So just curious if you had any ideas on that.
Yeah, I have so many ideas, and I believe we need to do both. Like, we need to bring in the artists and the creative sector in these spaces where we take these very, very important decisions on the future. But I would also love to see more sustainability advocates and policymakers to use these powerful platforms that we have in festivals. We usually say that festivals, they are like temporary cities and they reflect society. So all the challenges we have in our society, from fossil fuel addiction to social injustices, they also exist at festivals and cultural events, which means that we can use these spaces to prototype a different future. We can test new ideas from innovations and products that are more sustainable to financial systems. And we can unite different parts of society while doing this. So I think it's really, really important to not try to put these different events like, okay, so we have these political meetings and they are only for policymakers, and then we have the cultural events and they are all only for artists and citizens, but also just try to create meeting spaces across the borders, because that's when magic really, really happens. So yeah, I would like to see that more.
Fantastic. Okay, so you are eager to say something. Yes.
Yeah, just very briefly, but I'm not a very frequent festival goer, but my impression is that every election year there is a lot of politicians in every festival, and we have the Sami festival Riddu Riddu, which is a cultural festival which has also a lot of debates and youth camps, children's camps, and indigenous music from all over the world. They profile a people, indigenous people from somewhere in the world every year. It's apparently a fantastic festival, which I only visited once, but my impression is that there is always a lot of politicians. So I thought that already happened. So,
But that's during election stuff. I'm talking maybe more on a regular basis.
but that's every once a fourth year. But.
Right, right. Let me also say that, so this is my argument about why I would love to see more policymakers in the creative spaces. There's research that was done by a professor at Princeton who looked at the impact of a storyteller, and that to me means a powerful speaker, a musician, a poet, whatever. And he used brainwave helmets to look at the brainwaves of the storyteller. They actually sync up with the people who are listening to the story. And there's also research that shows that heart rates also synchronize in theater settings. So without any physical touch, and I know we've all been in these spaces, whether it is a festival, a show, a poetry slam, whatever, you can feel the energy, and storytellers have in their palm sort of the connection with their audience. And if we can learn how to maximize that and to transition it into concern for the planet, concern for the humans, I think it truly is an untapped potential that we don't understand as much. So I'm going to say, you need to go to more festivals. I will take you with me if you need to find some. But yeah, Luis, you had your hand up, or somebody, I saw a hand. Was it Luis? Okay, yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm not only talking about politicians, but also climate activists, the sustainable innovators that are creating the solutions. Like, I would like to see more of them also being a part of festivals, because then they can also connect to people and understand people. And there are also actually research from Sweden showing that when we go to cultural events and sport events and music festivals, we are more open to new ideas, and we are more likely to change traditional behaviors and norms. So it's gigantic possibilities here for everyone who wants to work for a more sustainable future to use these spaces, not only politicians.
Fantastic. Rodian, do you want to say something? I know we've skipped over you a few times. Any thoughts?
Very briefly, because of time pressure. Yes, agree, and I frankly share with you that this is also part of our lobby, to bring some strong artists, singers, and performances under our delegations to any COP. Because we strongly believe that in many ways, music and dancing can make more rather than endless declaration and papers. So this is also part of our strategy.
Yeah, and I might suggest that we even create a space at a conference like COP that is more of a creator studio or festival space, so that artists will feel like they're in their element, creative practitioners. But I would like to also, I know we have 10 minutes left. First, I would love to talk to the policy folks about how do we legitimize creative practitioners as stakeholders in this group, because I can tell you, anytime you register for a UN or government event, they will ask you which sector you represent. Private sector, academia, government, civil society, youth, etc. I'm always checking the other box and putting in creative sector. We still are not really recognized, I don't think personally. I don't know if you feel differently. How can the policy community really ensure that this sector is legitimate in terms of being a stakeholder group? Anyone? Yes.
Well, I can share an experience from like actually two experiences, two very brief experiences from Norway and the Nordic countries, how we have done that. In the Nordic countries, we have this project called Sustainable Lifestyles in the Nordic countries. And in that field, there are like 6 different sectors. You have the food sector, you have the educational sector, you have the environmental labeling, like the Swan brand for eco-labeling. And you have you have gender research and kind of all these kind of seemingly very different projects, but brought together within this umbrella of sustainable lifestyles. And in the beginning, people were just like, but okay, the cultural sector, what are you doing here? But then kind of when we started to talk, all of them kind of understood that you can actually be the glue that can help, or the glue or the eye opener, and whichever metaphor we use, but kind of a sector that can enable all of us to kind of see our perspectives jointly and express them differently. And that was a huge eye opener and one of the main results from that project. And another result from that project is also like a Nordic roadmap for cultural institutions. I will not go into detail of it, but it's just to share that it's there, it exists if you're interested in kind of more like how to work in a greener way. But that's just a parenthesis here. Another example from Norway as such is that we have created a national portal for indicators for the UN sustainability goals, not only the climate goal, but for all sustainability goals. And in the first version of this, culture and the cultural sector only had one goal relating to the expenditure on cultural heritage. And now in the second round, we have actually kind of managed to get a hook into many, many other goals. And we have had a meeting with the financial ministry, with the foreign ministry, with kind of all kind of different ministries who are in different sectors, and kind of shown them how we work in the cultural sector and what we can offer to the society. And that's has been an eye-opener for them. And I'm quite proud that we have actually managed to get it into the national indicator portal for sustainability. And it may seem very bureaucratic and very boring with these indicators, but when you start to measure something, it's a recognition and an acknowledgement that it matters. And like that, we have actually stated and formalized that culture matters. And I do think that we need to do these kind of proactive exercises non-stop and all the time.
Fantastic. Okay, so I think we're wrapping up. So we have 5 minutes. Maybe what we can do is go through each panelist again with some last-minute thoughts. I just want to say personally, I believe that if artists had more power and money, we would see a bigger impact in changing the way our world is right now. This is my personal perspective. I would love to know from the panelists, we're here at COP28, what would you like to see at COP29 when it comes to the issue of arts and culture? And any last words you would like to say?
I really do believe that we should keep showing up, and then we should demand our presence every time. And of course, you bring up the finances and the availability of funds. It's there. We have to go after it and go with it. So, I mean, it's ours, you know. We're speaking on behalf of our own peoples, but also on behalf of our community. In fact, we are borderless in art and culture. So we have to understand that and go for our presence together.
Wonderful. Thank you.
I think that it's a very specific COP, all of us now, by many reasons. It's some kind of so ironic trying to understand why people are going to Dubai. So, and for me, it's sometimes like a climate show. So the other point which is very concerned is it seems that a lot of business are here trying not to make revenge, but I think trying to increase their position in terms of fossil fuels. So what we can do? I think we should keep strong. And from my perspective, we don't want to talk about critical minerals. We should start talking about critical peoples, critical cultures, so critical nature. I think that is our final destination. So on our way to the next COP. And maybe, particularly if you look at Brazil, maybe we should create a cultural framework led by indigenous peoples.
Very good points, Rodion, but I also want to go back to Rodion's previous point. The singer and artist they brought in their delegation was just fantastic. It went straight to the heart. And this was very touching just to hear her voice. So that's definitely something, and maybe and one other point that I see to more and more conferences that there are artists drawing as the discussions are going, and that's what I see more and more of, even at the it was in Bonn at the SAPSTA meeting that there was artists during the World Cafe drawing the discussions at each table. So that is one thing which is coming more and more to what I notice. And then for the next COP, so maybe we should more of us should do like Rodion has done and bring artists in the delegations, and maybe have I don't know. Excuse my ignorance, but is there a cultural pavilion where there could be artists gathering and showing, and maybe that could be an idea too if there isn't, but...
There is an entertainment and culture pavilion. It is within the youth, women and gender pavilion. I also know that I think the UAE has a creative economy focused pavilion, but it's relatively, and there's also Climate Live. So there's some arts and culture related, entertainment related stuff, but not a full pavilion, which I would argue would be fantastic.
Yeah, and then I like the Rodion's point of critical people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Solveig, any last words, thoughts for next COP?
Well, I do believe that we are on the track of something here, and I know that this Climate Heritage Network has worked with a lot of organizations, including Julie's Bicycle and cultural organizations worldwide, to create a joint work declaration towards next COP. And I do think that as many as possible across the world, artists, policymakers, cultural organizations, however you are involved in the cultural field, come and join that declaration. And in connection to that declaration, there should be a program or a cultural pavilion is a good idea, but we need to make sure that it's not like becoming mere entertainment, just like relaxation in between these other important meetings. It needs to be like a crucial pavilion within itself that can show, for example, how culture connects to climate colonialism, to climate justice, to polarization issues, to climate shame, climate anxiety, like equity, diversity, inclusion, and all these, and how also culture contributes to good local societies. So all these issues that we who work in the sector know how it is connected. We need to create a strong program that can highlight that and share that with the rest of the world to enable like true integration between cultural actions, cultural policy, and environmental policy, and the decisions and the steps to take to go further in this field.
Wonderful. And Luis, wrap us up.
Yes. So I believe COP29 should invite more artists as experts and change agents, not entertainers. It's a big difference. And I also want to really recommend you who are in Dubai to reach out to Climate Live. It's a youth-led climate movement, a climate justice movement that use the power of music concerts to raise awareness. And I also want to say that you should really involve young activists, include them and listen to them. They are very wise and they really can challenge you. And also bring COP29 closer to the people. Why not make it a festival, for example?
COP29 Festival, I love it. All right, so on that note, we're going to wrap up. I just also want to thank the Nordic Council of Ministers for putting together a panel, and again, including creative practitioners who are sitting on the panel alongside policymakers. So thank you very much. I do hope you stay and enjoy the reception. I believe our panelists who are here are going to stick around right? And yes, feel free to connect with our speakers. We do have flyers in the back. We didn't have a lot of time to go into everybody's bio, contacts, etc., but they are available in the back. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming.